No matter who you are, selling your house is a big decision. And I think it's fair to assume most people are a little uncomfortable with the whole exercise. And they want to make sure they make the right decision. So, in many cases, they're going to want to interview more than one salesperson. As a sales professional, I think you need to be prepared for this in your listing presentations when it comes up in conversation. How are you going to handle it? And you want to make sure you're the one they choose. One of the deciding factors is going to be your experience. Make sure you point out your experience in the listing presentation, that this isn't your first day at the rodeo, and that you know how to navigate the complexities of a real estate transaction. You also want to point out your education. You want them to understand that you are constantly investing in yourself for their benefit. We're always looking for new ways, new strategies, new techniques, and new ways to market a property more effectively. And you're up to date and current on everything that's going on in the industry. Then I think a big part of this are client reviews. And I think it's normal for people to be skeptical. I mean, we've all heard the sales guy who makes promises and doesn't deliver. So I want you to assume that the people you're talking to may have a similar feeling. So how do you make the point that what you're saying is accurate, honest, transparent, and real? Well, collect video testimonials from your clients. And the videos are even better than letters. They get to see a real person talking about a real experience. They connect with that person as a homeowner, one homeowner to another. And what that homeowner is saying in the video is, you did a great job, you dotted the I's, crossed the T's, and you were absolutely excellent to work for. That in itself can be enough to get you that signature. Now, don't be surprised, like I said, if they want to talk to some other agents and they want to compare products, services, and rates. I think most people want to know that they got a good deal, they paid a fair price, and they got really what they expected. In most cases, they'd like to get even a little more than what they expected. And I've always said that to you, deliver the unexpected. One of the tools that I developed was what I call a comparison chart. And I would lay out the different companies in the marketplace and the different agents, and I would analyze all the products and services. And I would take them through that comparison chart. And at the end of the exercise, who had more products and services than anybody else? Me. So their decision was straightforward after I laid it out that way. But again, you got to put it down on paper. You got to be able to show it to somebody. I'm using that metaphorically. On my computer screen during my digital listing presentation, I would show them I have this and they have that, but we have more of this and they don't have as much of that. And at the end of the day, if it costs as much to do business with them as it does with us, but you get more with us than you do with them, doesn't it make sense to go with us? That's sort of the drill on that. So it's really kind of doing that comparison one to the other. Where does somebody get the most bang for their buck is really what you want to lay out. Now, the recruiting letter. You all are going to get recruiting letters from the competition. The brokers are in the business of trying to attract you to go work for them. Do not throw out your recruiting letters. What I want you to do is keep them. Later on, you're going to be on a listing appointment and you're going to be competing with an agent from another office for that opportunity. And for this example, let me just say the agent you're competing with is Randy the Realtor, and he works for BS Real Estate. That's Bob Smith, and Bob Smith is the broker. Let's pretend you're on the appointment with the seller and you're laying out all the stuff, and they said, well, we're going to get Randy the Realtor over. He works for BS Real Estate. Now, the first thing you want to do is not say anything derogatory about the competition. There's nothing ever good about pulling somebody down to make yourself bigger. What I'd say, Randy the Realtor, yeah, I know that guy. He's a nice guy. By the way, I like Randy. He sells a lot of my stuff. So that means we cooperate, but boom, guess what? Randy sells my stuff. See the underlying message there? Now let me take it a little bit further. Let's pretend, Mr. and Mrs. Homeowner, you were to call Bob Smith, Randy's broker, and you were to say, Bob Smith, listen, I want to list my house for sale. Who's the best agent in my neighborhood? And they said it was Chris from Leader Realty. Would you give me the listing? And the homeowner is going to say, Bob Smith, the broker over at BS Real Estate, isn't going to say Chris is the best real estate agent in town. He's going to say Randy is, because Randy works for Bob. And I'm going to say, well, let's pretend. Perfect two-word phrase. Let's pretend if Bob, the broker, said the best one over there is Chris, would you then give me the listing? They're going to say, well, I guess we would, but I don't think he's going to say that. And I'm going to say, well, let me show you something. Step number 5. And when I do, I think it's going to change the way you're thinking. And what do I have? I have a recruiting letter from Bob, the broker. And basically it says, Bob holds me in high regard. He thinks I'm a great agent and I would be a great asset at his company. So I lay that out to the homeowner and I say, you see, what Bob's saying in a nutshell, if you're going to hire somebody, you should hire me because even he wants to. At the end of the day, don't throw out your recruiting letters. Keep them. They're a great tool for convincing a seller to give you the listing. Now, once in a while, you're going to run into an appointment with a client and they're going to say, I had it listed with your company. Why didn't you sell it then? And I'm going to say, well, I don't want to speak necessarily to whatever the last agent did, but I'm going to show you something. And when I do, I think it's going to make a big difference. Now, what I want you to do is take out a pen and a notepad. And I want you to ask the client to write their name on a notepad. And then I'm going to say, can you give me the pad and the pen back? And I'm going to write their name on it as well. Now, I'm going to say, same pen, am I right? They're going to say yes. And I'm going to say, same notepad, am I right? And they're going to say yes. And I'm going to say, the same name, am I right? And they're going to say yes. But I'm going to say, those signatures are as different as night to day. Can you see the difference? And they say yes. You see, it's not just the company you choose, it's the agent. So what I'm looking for is to have that one little technique in my pocket. Should that come up, it could be the difference between you getting a listing, getting that extra listing this year and not getting one at all. Now, the analytical close is commonly referred to in the world of sales as the Ben Franklin close. And it's really simple. We have a seller that's hesitating, they're postponing to sign the listing, and you want to move them forward and get that signature. So, and they're going to say, well, we want to sleep on it. You say, no problem, but listen, before we do that, let me run you through an example of a way I've come up with trying to make sure that my clients get to the right answer. It's kind of like a pros and cons list. It's a yes and no's list. So what I'm going to do is take a notepad, write, pros on one side, cons on the other, or yes or no, and I'm going to ask some very pointed questions. And at the end of the exercise, the side with the most check marks is going to be the side that will give the seller clarity. Basically, at the end of the exercise, the seller is going to come to the conclusion, you know what? Now that we've gone through all those questions, it does make sense to list my home for sale. I love this because it's visual. I love it because it's easy for you to navigate through the conversation, and they can literally see the benefit at the end.